Good morning, and thank you for joining me today, the first day of March, the start of Women's History Month. And we could all think of women who have made differences in our lives, and we certainly know that women have made an absolute difference in the world. As a matter of fact, women make the world a better place. Obviously, it's been an interesting couple of days, a frustrating couple of days, an unnerving couple of days as it relates to violent crime in our community. On one hand, we are acknowledging that we had an 8% decrease in violent crime in 2021. We're recognizing the efforts of our entire community in helping to make that happen. And then on the other hand, you're still dealing with more violent crime, dealing with young people that are engaged and being victims of things that young people and people of their age should not be engaged in. Sunday, bowling alley, Tibet, right after midnight, Coke Street, a little bit later that day. That evening, I was at the hospital with a family of a 21-year-old that was shot on Largo. Last night, on McKenzie Street, in which a 17-year-old lost his life. And being there with his family and a community that's all asking the same question: why? Why? And to look at the senselessness and the foolishness of it all. And as usual, Savannah Police and now our new Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement on scene, doing what they do. But it all goes back to the question, why? It goes back to our understanding of what could be so bad, what could be so negative, that I would need to attempt to use deadly force on someone else. And the reality is that when you use a gun on someone, you're intending to kill them. You're intending to put a period at the end of that sentence. And again, maybe I'm just a little too old because I came up at a different time, but judging from not only the response of our police department, and really the ability of our community to respond and to give information where they have it. In the end, it's these interpersonal relationships. It's the beefs, whatever that is, that puts us in these situations. These are people, very clearly, and the chief will be here when I get finished to offer any updates, who clearly have some type of relationship, albeit not a good relationship. This is not random crime we're talking about. These are individuals that there's something going on. And what we have to do ultimately is break into what's going on. And again, how do we get in between the beef and the decision to be able to do that? And then, and I know people get tired of me saying it, is the issue of the weapon, of the gun. More likely than not in the hands of somebody who should not have it. And being in that moment with a parent that is suffering the worst traumatic shock that a parent can experience. That either their child has been wounded or even worse, that their child has died. It does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to us as a community. But again, we have to get in between these decisions, and we need people's help, because oftentimes, and what I've heard being there is that, oh yeah, this had been going on for quite some time. Or you have victims that don't want to talk to the police, which is indicative in my mind of something else, that we want to handle this ourselves. And if we don't get ahead of that, then we will continue to have traumatic incidences. And that's not the police's job to raise people's children. It's not the city of Savannah's job to raise people's children. And so again, I'm calling on moms and dads and sisters and brothers and best friends and homeboys and homegirls and besties and boos and all of that other stuff, that if you know that there is smoke there that might become a fire, then help us to get in between that to prevent something from happening. So again, Chief Mentor is here to answer any questions at the conclusion of my remarks about specifics. On another front, we send out our collective prayers and support to the country of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people who are standing up to bullies. I don't like bullies. And I am just so invigorated by the Ukrainian people and this Ukrainian president that's standing up to the bully known as Vladimir Putin. And I think the Russians got a little bit more fight than they expected. And I say good for them. Locally, about 3,800 soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division from Fort Stewart have been deployed to Eastern Europe to support our NATO allies. And I had an opportunity to talk to General Constanza this week and certainly offered our full support. As the mayor of Savannah, I extend our best wishes, thoughts and prayers to the soldiers and the families of the 3rd Infantry Division. The 3rd ID is an essential part of our nation's premier strategic contingency force. And so those soldiers and their families are in our thoughts as they support our partners and allies during this important mission. And we thank them always for what they do. We are now entering a new phase in the COVID-19 pandemic. No, the pandemic is not over, but a lot has changed in the last 2 years. Vaccines and boosters and tests are now widely available, and we now have effective treatments for COVID-19. I'm proof that if you are fully immunized and boosted, you can catch COVID and win. I'm still waiting to sneeze from my COVID infection. We cannot eliminate all cases of COVID, but we do have tools that will help us to be resilient and tools that will help us to adapt during this new phase of the pandemic. So our focus is shifting, and the priority now is to protect our healthcare systems from being overwhelmed and to limit severe illness from COVID-19 by protecting those at the highest risk. And that is why the CDC just announced a new system for monitoring COVID-19 at the county level. And as I understand it, this system puts a higher focus on our healthcare resources. Essentially, our hospitals are becoming overwhelmed with really sick COVID patients. Do we have enough bed space to handle other health crises? And using a combination of metrics, the CDC has developed the COVID-19 community level, which gives every county in the United States a ranking of low, medium, or high risk. And you can find this level for any county on the CDC website or the Coastal District's website at coastalhealthdistrict.org, coastalhealthdistrict.org. Today, thanks to the efforts of Team Savannah, and because of our community and our resilience, our willingness to keep the faith and follow the science, Chatham County is fortunate enough to be in the low category. That means for us that hospitalizations and severe illness are low, and most people can take minimal practical precautions. And in this circumstance, masks are not needed in most settings. As such, Savannah's mask mandate expired at midnight last night, or midnight this morning, and I will not be renewing it for the time being. Again, this is consistent with the science, and we have stuck with the science. But as we've seen before, COVID often comes in waves. So there might be a time where we move into the medium or high categories, and then those recommendations will change. We have promised that we would not do anything that was not backed and supported by not only science, but also medical advice. So our citizens, the majority of them, can take a break from masks and other measures when things are better, and we'll reach for them again if things are getting worse. Now, there are still people who should wear masks because they're at higher risk, and they should take extra precautions regardless of their community status. And if you know someone or you're around someone who's at higher risk, you should also take precautions like masking and testing to be a good neighbor and to help others to stay healthy. And there are situations in which we should always wear a mask. The quarantine and isolation recommendations have not changed. If you have symptoms of COVID or if you're not feeling well, you should wear a mask. If you're in the 10 days after a COVID-19 diagnosis and you're around other people, you should wear a mask. If you are exposed to someone with COVID-19, you should wear a mask around others for 10 days. And of course, if you're on public transportation, if you're flying in airplanes or in airports, you still have to wear a mask. At all COVID-19 community levels, everyone aged 5 years and older should be vaccinated and boosted when eligible. So our goal here is to prevent severe illness and hospitalizations, and vaccines do that, even if you become infected with COVID-19. And so utilizing our new COVID-19 community levels and following the guidance at each level can help us get to a point where COVID-19 is no longer a disruption to our daily lives. So although we're no longer under a mask mandate here in Savannah, please do not be surprised if you see me still wearing a mask. I've gotten used to it. And over the last 2 years, I have not had a serious sinus infection for 2 years. And in Savannah's pollen-laden environment, that works for me. So you'll still see me wearing masks for quite some time. From our state General Assembly, we've heard that some cities and areas, Liberty County and Hinesville and some other cities are rapidly moving towards a change in their designation that will allow them to collect the highest level of hotel motel tax. And we're excited about that because it makes sense. And theirs is moving, and it makes sense. And their representatives are listening to them because they recognize it's a way to raise money from for their community without being on the taxpayer's back. And I'm certainly hoping that our local delegation is watching and watching what's happening across the state, and that Savannah will soon become one of those areas, the last of the hub cities to do so, one of over 90 cities to do so, including Thunderbolt. So I'm looking forward to it. Our eyes are watching. This is something that is a win-win for our entire community. And again, I appeal to our local delegation to heed the will of the people they represent and to go ahead and change the category and let us handle the rest. So we're looking forward to that. To celebrate Women's History, the City of Savannah will, as a part of our Equity and Diversity series, will feature special stories all month in our what's known as the Women's History in Savannah series. And just as was the case last month, we have videos that will post every Tuesday in March to the city's TikTok account at City of Savannah. So I now have TikTok. I do not know how to use it, but I do have TikTok. And so if you don't follow us there, make sure you do so. And so these same videos will post on Facebook and Instagram later in the same day. And we look forward, again, Savannah, what makes Savannah great over the last 289 years is the fact that we are the beneficiaries of the contributions of everybody. And so we're going to celebrate everybody all year long. So it's a party every single month of the year. Last Thursday, the Savannah City Council held its final meeting in February, which was our monthly evening meeting. And we got a lot done, and we received public safety updates from Savannah Fire, Savannah Police, and our new ONE's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And as we look at ways to continue to make our community even a safer one, these departments play a pivotal role. They're not the be-all, end-all, but they certainly represent the city's efforts, the city proper's efforts to be able to make that happen. And so I'm especially excited about the additional discussion about the whole of government approach to safety that ONE's brings to the table. And of course, we celebrate the continuous support and achievements of Savannah's finest, in our police department, Savannah's bravest, which is our fire department. And we'll have to come up with something for ONE's. I don't know, let's figure out something. During our meeting, we also authorized a contract as we continue to invest in the lives of our young people, contract up to $125,000 to cover the cost of equipment for our various youth sports leagues, and a $1.7 million contract for the renovation of the former It's Amazing shop on Waters Avenue. The site is ultimately proposed to serve as a new home of our Savannah Impact program. This is a strategic property on a very strategic corridor, and we want to invest in that corridor. And so the council, the majority of council also approved a resolution to begin the work of enacting the Vision Zero initiative for transportation safety. We believe that there should be no traffic fatalities either by car or involving pedestrians, and so this was the first step to authorize the city manager to develop an implementation plan within 12 months to bring to city council. And so we thank the community partners that supported that resolution, and certainly the members of council that supported it. Also, the city council also approved the changes to this year's St. Patrick's Day celebration. I think it's fair to say that we are a go for St. Patrick's Day, for the parade, and for our festivities afterwards. These changes include an expanded to-go cup zone, again, an opportunity to allow local businesses to win for this St. Patrick's Day. A prohibition on out-of-town motor coaches within the expanded zone, and limits to the right-of-way permitting activities. And so today we will focus as we roll out our public education campaign. Today we're going to talk about what folks need to know about the expanded to-go cup zone. And we'll cover other celebration details over the next couple of weeks. So for one day and one day only, on March the 17th, one day, The To-Go Cup zone will be expanded to encompass the areas from the Savannah River to Victory Drive, and from the Talmadge Bridge to Truman Parkway. Savannah River to Victory Drive, and from the Talmadge Bridge to the Truman Parkway. And so this is being implemented for a variety of reasons. First of all, we want to focus more of our businesses gaining financially. Again, we've talked about this. Savannah First, we've talked about how St. Patrick's Day, although hosted in Savannah, many businesses closed. It's just not worth it for them. And so we wanted to create a win for our local businesses. This is their time to win. And so we want to focus on more businesses in that corridor having the opportunity to win. And in this instance, that we're hopeful that there will be a benefit to locals and visitors alike, not only patronizing businesses, but also different restaurants. We want them to eat and drink and be merry. We want them to dance and enjoy our wonderful weather. But we know that it's always been concentrated to one area. So now we're expanding it out a little bit. And so places like the Starland and places that have not traditionally had those opportunities will have that. It's also creating some opportunities in a COVID conscious zone that we're spreading people out a little bit. And we also looked at this year's celebration in the modified To-Go Cup zone as an opportunity to really, again, to involve more people, involve more places, again, helped with some of the congestion. And again, we know that a lot of our locals sometimes don't come down. Well, now locals can go to places closer to where they are. And so as we all recall, and now it seems like an eternity ago, and not since I've been mayor, St. Patrick's Day in Savannah is lively and it's crowded, and we want people to come here and we want them to have an enjoyable time in our city. And we want to explore ways to lessen the people that are compacted in just a few areas. And so this work came with so many partners that we've worked with throughout the years who are a part of this. And then of course we have our local team, Savannah, Jay Melder, who has not experienced a St. Patrick's Day, but his green jacket is being fitted. And so we're looking forward to that. Marty Johnston in my office, who in her prior life has worked on this for many, many years. Everybody knows Susan Brooker, Chief Mentor, Chief Menard, Judy Jones, everybody's favorite liquor lady, who I don't think sleeps at all. I run into her a little bit more than I would like. Eddie Grant, I saw Eddie's over here, and then Sergeant Jason Pagalero, who does not sleep. I don't know what they're feeding him because he doesn't sleep. But you know, all of Team Savannah, people who just work hard. And again, the goal of this is how do we balance public safety with public, the need for public to have a good time, and then of course the opportunities for our businesses to do well. And so these are professionals, bar none, across the nation. They do this stuff well, and they will do it again well. And then we'll look at it. We'll do a tabletop, and we'll look at saying what went really good, what went really bad, what do we need to change. And then of course next year it's on a Friday, right? And so Friday's a whole different animal. So then we'll make those modifications. This is a continuing, living experience for us. So after my remarks, before Chief Mentor comes, we'll have Chief Mentor come first, and then if there are any questions from members of Team Savannah, we'll have them come up and they can answer any questions that you have about zone planning and implementation as well. I'm also really excited to announce, I've been notified that Savannah's Martin Luther King Jr. Day Parade, which was postponed by the MLK Observance Day Association because of COVID concerns, will be held on April the 16th. And so I understand that they will be approaching the city and going through the permitting process to make that happen. And again, they promised us that they would have it, and I say, you know, who says we have to have an MLK Observance Day parade in January? Who says that? So the weather might be better, and so, you know, again, more details, but they called to inform me of that. And you know, for all the folks that were really upset that we didn't have it, they're looking for volunteers. They're looking for volunteers, and so contact the MLK Junior Observance Day Association, and I'm sure that they will find a place for you to volunteer. That is also a huge undertaking as well. And as you remember, August 4th is the assassination date of MLK, so April is also an appropriate time as well. Finally, our weekly reminder that the City of Savannah's Economic Development Team offers a variety of online learning options for our budding entrepreneurs and our established businesses and all of those in between. And so these classes, which have been going on now for the last 2 years, it was an opportunity to uplift our community through economic opportunities presented by owning a business. And so we know that you prepare for rain in times of sun, and so here, you know, this is an opportunity for folks. We know that the pandemic has shifted a lot of business plans, and so here's an opportunity to learn from experts. So to learn about these course offerings, you can visit the economic development page at our digital calendar at savannahga.gov/calendar, savannahga.gov/calendar. So I know that was a lot to unpack, and so I'll answer any questions, and then I said y'all, right? And then Chief, however, we'll work it out.
Good morning, Mayor Johnson.
Good morning. Good, thank you.
So with you rescinding the mask mandate for Savannah, is there any worries with St. Pat's in the crosshairs, and then obviously with the weather getting warmer, a lot more people heading down? Any worries, or are we going to have to go back down that route?
It is what it is. I mean, for us, the mask mandates have always been a response to the numbers. And so that is why, you know, it wasn't based on politics, it wasn't based on preference, it wasn't based on being popular. It was based on the numbers. So obviously we have a fabulous medical advisory team. We have a great relationship with our coastal health district. And so the numbers support what we're doing. If it goes back, it goes back. So I would tell people, don't throw away all your masks yet. But I do think that, you know, a couple of things. I believe we're at 54% of vaccination rate. We probably have achieved some level of herd immunity from people. Omicron, I think, helped in a way because Omicron was much different than Delta. And so, you know, for some people, you might be, you know, have a higher level of immunity. We don't know how long that lasts. But I think, you know, it's an opportunity for us to be able to move forward. You know, we know better. Hopefully a lot of us will do better, and we'll see where that goes.
And then regarding the string shootings we had over the weekend, what can be said about just this kind of recurring over and over again? In many cases, it's a lot of people not willing to help themselves out or not willing to help the people that are trying to investigate this.
Well, I mean, and that's the point. I mean, you know, people can say what they want to. Oh, you know, again, you know, people keep people safe. People keep people safe. When you look at not only the clearance rate of the Savannah Police Department, when you look at the response time of the Savannah Police Department, you're talking about 2 to 3 minutes they're on scene. As a matter of fact, our experience has been that we've responded so quick that we've essentially saw the end of the crime in progress. You saw somebody running away. But we have to be willing to help ourselves. And I will tell you, I have spent times at the hospital bed of a young man, and most times they're young men. And you know, I'm not saying anything. I mean, that's the type of behavior because it's indicative of I'm going to handle it myself, or I'm trying to protect somebody else. And so again, we need the loved ones of these people to say, hey, you know, that means these become continuing circumstances, and it happens again and again and again. And so I will tell you that 17 is too young to die. And you know, to see a family that is literally broken apart, you know, is something you don't want to see, something you don't want to experience. And I tell people, you know, if you got shot and you don't want to say anything, you might get shot again. And this time it may be more than a flesh wound or a thigh wound or an arm wound. I mean, we have got to be willing to help ourselves. And so I know it's frustrating for Chief Mentor and our police department to have uncooperating witnesses. You know they saw it and they don't want to say anything. But then when it's victimized, oh, we want everybody to come in, you know, I mean, you know. The fact of the matter is, it's a small number of people who are engaged in illegal activity, and the fact is, the more we can get off the street, the better. And as far as I'm concerned, again, as I've said before, if you do a violent crime involving a gun in our community, you don't need to be a part of our community. And then that goes to prosecution, that goes to courts, and you know, but we need to make it very, very clear that gun violence is not welcome here, and people have to fear the consequences of that. And so we've talked before about inviting our federal partners in because the feds have a whole different thought about gun violence. And you know, when you're involved in gun violence on the federal level, you're going to do some time. And so although I would love to see lives rehabilitated, on the other end of it, we have to keep our community safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Just to kind of add to that, you know, you mentioned that, you know, the parents' responsibility, I have to accept, or the community's responsibility about the violence that's going on. And, you know, I've been working in Savannah a few years now, and not just Savannah, but other communities where, you know, so many times, you know, we step up and say, well, what is the police department doing? What is the clergy doing? We're holding these prayer vigils. We have these public instances where dignitaries get out and speak to the public and everything. But in my own personal opinion, I believe too that, you know, the community needs to step up, the parents need to step up. And we talk about programs, you know, what can we get going to help get these kids off the street, these young people off the street, and to where they don't find themselves in situations where they're getting into trouble with guns or with anything else. I look at a lot of these parents themselves in their 30s. No, they're in their 30s. And they have 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And a lot of those 36-year-old parents, if you will, or 35-year-old parents, not all, but maybe haven't been educated themselves as far as parenting skills. So you kind of run into a scenario where blind leads blind, in my opinion. Should be maybe focus more perhaps on community programs, outreach programs that educate parents so that they are then armed with the tools to mitigate these types of situations with their children.
Yeah, well, I think that Savannah is blessed to have many of these things already in place. Yesterday, McKenzie Street, police were on the scene, clergy was on the scene, and clergy was actively engaged in that moment. We have resources like Parent University. Chief and I were with Parent University on Saturday. You know, again, helping parents to better parent. And I think for me, it's not necessarily the age of the parent, it's the engagement of the parent. You know, again, I'm, you know, maybe I'm a little old, but I was just kind of raised at a different time. I mean, and again, we didn't have a lot of the influences that people know. I mean, it always goes back to being very, very basic. You have to know who your kids are. You have to know who your kids are around. You have to know what your kids are doing, and do that the best you can. And then you have to really engage a village around your children. The fact of the matter was, I grew up in a relatively rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, and my parents couldn't keep their eyes on me all the time, but there were eyes all over the place. And so, you know, I was a Cub Scout, I was a Boy Scout, I was involved in church activities. I mean, I was programmed to be able to do that. These young people, a lot of them involved, were not going to be involved in some of these programs. So we have a lot of nonprofits we fund to provide opportunities for young people. Again, We're working with the mediation center and other, to really find nonviolent ways to deal with conflict. But on the other end of it, we have to identify young people that are in trouble. Our police department has engaged with our school system to really create a continuum. When things happen in the schools, we're familiar with them on the streets. When things happen in the streets, we're familiar in the schools. So that communication is going. But at the end of the day, is each individual child, is each individual decision. And we have young people in our community that are in crisis. They're in trauma, as far as I see it. And there are ways to deal with trauma, which is why, again, I have advocated and will be doing more about looking at gun violence as a public health crisis, because that's what it is. How do we deal with people who are literally ticking time bombs? And in their minds, the only way to deal with disagreement is dealing with it through violence. To that end, and it's really a little off topic, but over 400 guns were stolen in Savannah. 483, Chief, last year in Savannah. 483. And so those guns make their way somewhere else. Wouldn't it have been nice if those were 483 less opportunities for a gun to be used? And so while our state is not providing us much support, we have to do what we can here. We have to lock our cars. We have to secure our firearms. And we have to make sure that we hold on to our children, we keep them in close view, and we love on them. We love on them, we love on them, we make them do the right thing. And that's telling. We don't call it snitching, we call it cooperating with the authorities. And we've given a bunch of ways for that to happen. If we have young people, if they want to give away, if they have a gun and they want to get rid of it, they can give it to me. Again, I'm not asking any questions. We just want the gun off of the street. And so, we know where that road leads. And we don't want another young person to be in that cycle. So we're all hands on deck, and we need our community to continue to have all hands on deck. We only get through this if we do it together.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you said, kind of piggybacking off of the gun violence as well, you said earlier that the community is asking the question, why? Why is this happening? What is your answer to them when they ask that?
Why is this happening? I am not sure that we as a society have taught our young people the right way to deal with conflict. I am not sure that we as a community have created ways of young people who want out to get out. I'm not sure that we as a community have dealt with the traumatic issues and sometimes substance abuse issues that people face in our community. I'm not sure that we have taught young men that there should be few things that they're willing to die for, and some of the things they're dying for are not worth dying for. And I'm not sure as a community we clearly understand that whenever there is a shooting incident, there's always more than one victim. There is mothers and fathers and grandparents and cousins and sisters and aunties and friends whose lives are forever changed by what occurred. And because here in Georgia, we feel that guns everywhere makes sense. And we are continually making it easier for someone to get a gun than it is to have a driver's license. And that we as a community, we as a state, have not frowned on this enough to the point where we are holding people accountable for being engaged in illegal gun activity. And finally, we as a community, for some reason, makes it either or, that, you know, if you are for common sense gun laws, you're against the Second Amendment. When the fact of the matter is, I think you could be for the Second Amendment and still be for common sense gun laws. I served in law enforcement, and I pack from time to time. But I also believe that it should be difficult to get a gun. I think it should be people who are involved in violence or have a history of violence or domestic violence incidents. I think it should be difficult. I mean, we were just looking this morning somewhere near the West Coast. A father was doing visitation with his kids, and he killed his kids and killed himself. Something is wrong there. And, you know, this is not only happening in Savannah, it's happening across the state and across the nation. I mean, fortunately for us, violent crime was down 8%. We had 2 more homicides than we had the year before. But for us, just 1 is enough. I mean, what if we could just wrap our arms around our young people enough that there was not another shooting in our community? And I believe that we can do it, which is why we get up every day and we continue to fight the good fight. But I think also adults have to show the way. And so we have to show it how we treat each other. We have to show it about the whole social media thing. You know, people talk crap on social media, and, you know, sometimes you see fights brewing right there on social media. And what are we doing? We're sitting around watching the comments. We're not getting in the middle of it. We're just sitting there, ooh, you heard what they said? Ooh, you heard what they said? I mean, again, brewing that schoolyard fight mentality. The only difference was when I was growing up, it was on the schoolyard, we fought, we were friends the next day. Here, you go out to the schoolyard, somebody shoots, and somebody's dead the next day. So, again, we all have a role to play, and I don't minimize the role that the city of Savannah plays in it, but, you know, the fact is, it's not our responsibility to raise people's children. It's not our responsibility to keep people safe within their own homes. It's our responsibility as a collective community to work together in the interest of every single child, every single young person, to see them and see them individually, to see them for their future, see them for their potential, and more importantly, to help them see their future. And I know I went rambling, I'm sorry. I'm passionate about that. Hello.
Children out of trouble. Are these programs working? I know the neighborhood program is a little new, but, you know, what numbers are we seeing? Is it working because we're still losing young lives?
Well, I think it is. I mean, again, when you look at the huge uptake in crime, violent crime nationally last year, and then Savannah's relative decrease in violent crime, again, slight uptick in homicides, I mean, something is working. You know, it could have been a whole lot worse. I don't think you can have too many programs, but I think more importantly, you can't have too many caring adults. We have more caring adults than we have programs. And so we see young people every day in crisis, and we know they are. And so our program may not be able to get to them, but we certainly can get to them as caring adults. And so, which is why there's no way that, you know, the police department or our one's office can know every single story, but we know people who do. And so, you know, we're asking caring adults, hey, this young man is really troubled. He really has some issues going on. Then let's create ways of identifying an individual. Let's make it a way of creating a gateway for him or a pathway to him or her to get to those programs. And, you know, again, sometimes it's more than programs. It's really about really therapeutic help. You know, some of these issues are mental. Some of them are substance abuse. Some of them require clinical assistance. And so we have to get them to those services. Of course, the city doesn't provide those things, but we need to be able to find ways to get them to it.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
I did want to ask, you mentioned if young people had a firearm, but they could get to no questions asked. Where are you on the possibility of starting back up the gun buyback?
It's already in progress.
How far along is it? How far along?
It's already in progress. So much to the chief's chagrin, you know, we're out there and we're communicating and making contact with young people like we did before. As you know, the state law prevents police departments from being engaged in gun buyback programs, which have proven successful across the country. We're working with some neighborhood partners, people that are engaged in the community at the young person level, and creating a pathway for that to happen. So I hope to soon have a report, but you know, we're already moving in that.
Thank you. Did want to ask also during council.
Sorry, Chief. I didn't tell the chief. I'm sorry. He's looking at me. I'm sorry.
Well, I was getting a little I did want to ask also, council was brought up the response time and concern there to a fatal shooting on Newcastle.
Yes.
That happened recently.
Yes.
We did get a response to some clarification from Chatham Emergency Services that a paramedic, in fact, did arrive within 6 to 7 minutes. I know there was some concern that it took up to 20 minutes or perhaps more for there to be some level of medical care for that individual. Did you have a chance to look over that reply from CES and were you able to do a little bit more digging on that?
I did. And again, I think it's important that my comments are taken in context. I was on Newcastle Street. A lot of people out there are upset, understandably so, of what they witnessed. Our police were on set, and as I asked the city manager to investigate, my concern, simply put, was the response time of the transport. Again, we acknowledge fully there were first responders on the scene, and you know, as far as we in our position is that they did not meet their service level agreement for response time for an ambulance, for transport, for a critical call. The fact was, this was not about first responders, and anyone who listened to my comments, they were I was very clear. I commended all of our first responders. They do a wonderful job, and that includes the men and women of Chatham Emergency Services. Many of them I've known, interacted with, but I think more importantly, we have to make sure that they have the support that they need to be able to do their jobs safely. So this is not about first responders, although the statement from Chatham Emergency made it about the heroic actions of the first responder. We agree. We agree. Any first responder, and to include those at Chatham Emergency, are heroic, and they're heroic in what they do. But it's not about first responders. It's about our emergency response system. So when Chatham Emergency Services took over the region's contract, the ambulance response times in Zone 1 and 2 for critical calls was to be on scene within 7 minutes and 59 seconds. 7 minutes, 59 seconds. And per the county contract in Zones 3 and 4, which is considered a rural area, the response time for an ambulance is 11 minutes and 59 seconds. And so due to that, Chatham Emergency is deployed what's known as rapid response vehicles with an advanced life support provider to be able to get to the scene in an expedited manner. We do not, we don't dispute that. Again, we had emergency responders on the scene. Savannah police were on the scene, Savannah fire were on the scene, you know, but the transport response did not meet that requirement. Savannah police were dispatched at 10:33 and they got on scene at 10:36. Savannah fire engine 4, they were dispatched at 10:35 and they arrived at 10:39. The EMS supervisor was on scene at 10:41. But the ambulance, per our CAD records, didn't respond until somewhere between 10:50 and 10:53, which is 17 to at least 20 minutes. And so simply put, there was a delay in the ability of this victim to be transported. Our role here was not to pick a fight with Chatham Emergency Services. What we're saying is, and I think their first answer was probably the best. They have 5 ambulances that were deployed dropping other people off. We get that. And I think I said very clearly to the city manager, if this is an anomaly, then tell us that. And it appears that they had 5 ambulances deployed. But if this is something that is more indicative of a system issue, then tell us that too and let us work with you to be able to find ways to improve our response time. At the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that everyone has the services that they need, the services they deserve within the time frame that is promised. And that's it. And so my comments, again, were based as a person that was there, and it was based as a person hearing from citizens, hearing from law enforcement, and at the end of the day, even though the individual, they say, well, the person didn't have signs of life, or so to speak. Well, then they came and they transported. So, again, our goal and our role here is to be a part of the solution. This is the issue that we saw. Is it an anomaly, or is it indicative of a system issue? If it is, then how do we help to fix it? Because the fact is, there will be another issue again, and we don't want that to happen again. So, I'm sorry if their feathers were ruffled. I know what I experienced and the folks experienced out there that day, and it's my responsibility as mayor of this city to ask the question. And what I asked the city manager to do was to get the question answered. And so, again, I hope that those conversations with city manager, Chief Menard, and our friends at Chatham Emergency Services continues, and let's find a way to fix it. Let's find a way to make sure we get people where they need to be. And so, although the responder may have been on scene, we could not transport that individual, and that was outside of the service. So, acknowledge it, let's fix it, let's make it better, let's move on.
Last thing for me.
Good morning, Saria. Go ahead.
With the mask mandate expiring at midnight, what's the status on masks in public buildings?
The city manager, with this change, the city manager will issue guidance. I want y'all to wear masks when y'all around me. No, it'll be the same. It'll probably move to being optional, but he'll release guidance to what that is. Again, I just think, we can't act like it's gone away. We did that before, and then we came back. So I think, we continue to exercise precautions. We continue to be smart. We do smart things, and we'll get good results.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Who wants first? Chief? Chief, all right, Chief, come on. Yeah, unless you have the updates or anything. Y'all want it? Yeah, I'm sure you want it. Sorry, Chief. They were not going to let you off that easy.
Morning, folks.
I just wanted to ask, right off the bat, I know we had the release of Sergeant Maglio last night on the fatal shooting involving the 17-year-old. Any other details outside of that release that you can give us right now?
No, what I can tell you is the detectives have been working on this all night. They're working on some information that they're following up on. So I'm pretty confident that they will be coming up with some type of resolution for this, hopefully soon. But I think they got some pretty good information that they're following up on.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we know that gun violence is a problem, but then we've heard today that a lot of the guns are coming from stolen vehicles, or just a lot of people who do have guns just not securing them properly. So people who are now committing these crimes don't even own the guns. is there any consequences or laws that you all can put in place as far as people who own the guns to properly having them in their possession?
We've been talking about that for quite some time, and we continue to stress the importance of being responsible gun owners in our community. We would hope and anticipate that that would send a very strong message. But to answer your question, that's probably something that we may need to look at now. This is something that not only we're facing, but other agencies around the county and around the state and around the country are also facing. So it may be something that we may need to look at.
And then as far as the increased homicides compared to 2020 to 2021 with that increase of 2 numbers, where are we at now in the month of March 1st, January, February? What do those numbers look like? Are you able to tell us that?
The unfortunate tragic incident last night was our 6th homicide this year.
And then was that higher?
I believe that's an increase of 2 from where we were at this time last year.
And then just piggyback a little bit, if you can go through the events as far as what happened this weekend, the one on Saturday or Sunday, and the one yesterday.
I can go through them real quick. I'll start with Newcastle. That was Wednesday night about 10:30. That was a 42-year-old male who lost his life in that incident. We're still working on that. The detectives have some information that they're following up on that one. We had the incident just after midnight on Sunday on Tibet Street at the bowling alley. They also have some pretty good information that they're following up on that one. That was a 22-year-old female who received a graze wound to the calf. Also later on that day, about 11 o'clock in the morning, that was the incident on Cope Street. That was a 21-year-old male who received a non-life-threatening gunshot wound to the leg. He's being uncooperative right now. He refused to give us any information regarding the location, suspect information, or any details involving the situation. And then later on Sunday night, about 7 p.m., was the incident that happened on Largo Street. That was a 24-year-old male who received serious injuries from a gunshot wound to the torso. Detectives are still working on that one. And then I think we've already gone over the incident yesterday on McKenzie Street, McKenzie Place.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Geographically, Savannah and Chatham County is located, we're at the port. We got Interstate 16, we got Interstate 95. These guns that these kids or people that are getting their hands on, and this is a problem nationwide, not just Savannah, I understand, of course. But does that present also a problem as far as your department trying to get guns off the street? You're kind of finding that, or maybe guns coming in from outside the area because Interstate 95 and 16 and the port, or do you care to comment on that?
Well, I mean, it's something we're always looking at. I mean, anytime we have one of these situations, one of the first things we want to look at is, trying to track and trace where weapons possibly came from. And whether that came from out of a car, whether it came from someplace else, that's something that we continue to take a look at in association with our federal partners.
Morning, Chief Leonard. How are you doing?
Good morning.
So when it comes to, like you said, with the uncooperative victims, I know that obviously makes your job a whole lot harder, but as police chief, I mean, just how annoying is that when you're kind of seeing this kind of happening over and over again and people are unwilling to help themselves?
Well, I mean, it's frustrating when we have somebody who we know has information that they can provide to us that would assist us in an investigation, and for whatever reason, they refuse to cooperate at all. These are situations we have to keep an eye on, and we continue to stress to people that we don't want them trying to go out and retaliate and trying to resolve these issues themselves. But it is frustrating when we have people that we're trying to assist and we're trying to gain information to try and determine what happened, and they just won't talk to us and just totally shut down.
Thank you, Chief. Susan Broker and our green team, I'm gonna call them, come on up and any questions that you have for them regarding what's going on for St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. The mayor obviously touched on the changes that were approved by City Council, the resolution to extend the to-go cup zone to Victory Drive. We are also implementing some other things. He mentioned we will not be issuing permits to motor coaches within that zone. And I think most importantly is we are not issuing permits for street activity, entertainment, alcohol sales. We will have some food sales. So, you know, you've seen in the past, we've had food trucks on Bay Street, things like that. So we'll have food options available for people. We thought it was important, yes, that most of our visitors go into our local bars and restaurants and partake of the food that's available there, but we know that some people need different options, so we will be having some food options for them. But we have our team here that really represent the great hundreds of city staff that work on this event and bring it to you safely and to our visitors safely. So we're available to answer any questions you might have about our planning processes. We will be, let me just say this, next press conference talking about cleanliness. So we will be informing you of some changes and some requests that we're going to be having of our visitors. You know that we are always trying to keep the green in St. Patrick's Day, and it's tough to do, but we will be talking about that. And then the final press conference will be talking about traffic and mobility, shuttles, and things of that nature, so that people know how to get around town and come down to the festivities. Hopefully reducing the number of cars that have to come into the downtown district. Also, expanding this to-go cup zone allows the opportunity, like the mayor said, for Starland and other areas to host their own types of activities. So, you know, really kind of spread the love, spread the wealth, spread the fun of St. Patrick's Day. So, if anybody has any questions, we are available.
Susan, I want to lead off, just from your perspective, looking at this expanded zone and the logistics behind it. Obviously, you're trying to get inside the minds of the patrons coming to enjoy that expanded zone, seeing it from their perspective, what might work, what might not. So can you explain what folks will be able to expect to see and experience if they choose to go outside of the traditional areas for St. Patrick's Day?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, we are encouraging our local businesses to be creative. You know, we're giving them this one-day opportunity to have to-go cups that, you know, that their patrons can take or, you know, be on their property and enjoy a band on their property or whatever it is that they want to do for that particular day. So we want people to look at this day as an opportunity to see different parts of the city, to patronize different areas, so that you know, we can expand the wealth of St. Patrick's Day. Savannah has many wonderful tourism corridors, you know, and we want people to go out and see and experience those things as well. So, you know, this is, as the mayor indicated, this is a trial and error, you know. This was the recommendation this year. I kind of liken it to a controlled burn, you know. You kind of bring it down to the bare and then you build it back up. We've been talking for many, many years about the familial, religious, cultural aspects of the Festival of St. Patrick and making sure that, you know, what we do here locally is reflected of that. So, you know, we will take a look at what happens this year and what works and what didn't, as he said, and see what we can build up for next year and the years in the future.
Open a few areas for sure. I know safety is one priority that you mentioned in your leading statement there. This may be a question for someone behind you here, but can you briefly detail what that security plan in whatever detail we can get right now will look like to make sure that everyone enjoying that expanded zone will do so safely?
As always, we'll have officers on the street throughout the area. It's an all hands on deck event for SPD. So one of the things we're looking at doing is rearranging how we put those officers out and where we put them. Obviously, some of that's going to change throughout the day, and we'll redeploy officers as we need to based on where the needs arise. We will still have a presence in the downtown area. but we will move some officers out into the expanded zone. We've always had officers at large. We'll move more officers to the at-large area throughout the zone, and we'll deal with it as it comes up. That's the best way to put it.
Will that look like perhaps leaning more on the partnerships with area law enforcement for the traditional downtown area, so you can get officers from Savannah who are more familiar with the areas in the expanded zone to patrol those?
Typically, our partnerships will be on the parade, but that alleviates our officers from the parade, which lets me use more of our officers throughout the festival area, throughout the event area in this case. In years past, we've used less officers from partner agencies on the route for the parade and kept more officers in the downtown. This year, we will use more officers on the parade to free up some of our officers to put them elsewhere throughout the expanded to-go club zone.
And will we see a variety of patrol means from horseback to segways to bicycles?
Certainly. Well, you'll always see that with any large-scale event in the downtown area or in the expanded to-go club zone now.
I know we traditionally have, and this is the last thing here, but the mobile command areas, West Julian is one area where we typically see that command post set up, also one down here between Bay and River Streets. Where will those be placed as it relates to this expanded zone on Homicide?
Some of that's under discussion still. We're looking probably to remove the one that's down here on River Street and just use the one at St. Julian to handle the downtown areas, and then possibly setting another one up at Central Precinct to cover the expanded Go Cup zone. But again, those are still in the planning process. We'll sort that out in the next few weeks.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
This might be more for the Savannah Fire Department or Chapter EMS. As far as just kind of tied in as well as, we just explained to how law enforcement is going to handle securities and stuff like that. We know that medical aid stations will be set up throughout. With the expanded zone, is that going to put any extra added stress on your agency, or will you be requiring as well agencies from outside the area to come in and assist with medical stations or first aid?
Yeah, we have identified some areas where we're going to have ambulance stays. Chatham EMS will take care of that. With Savannah Fire, with our partnership with them and the EMS side of the business, we will have additional fire units that will be deployed for the event. They'll be staged throughout the city, especially with the expanded zone, that will be able to assist with the medical response piece of that. Then again, we'll confirm with Chatham exactly how that's all going to work when it comes time for the event. But there is definitely going to be expanded resources that day to handle that throughout this expanded zone.
And this might be more of a question for Susan. Regarding that expanded to-go cup zone and only having it on Thursday, the 17th, the day of the parade, was there ever a conversation of expanding that to Friday and Saturday when we might see a lot more out-of-towners coming into town, or was it always just kind of like that just on that day?
It really was about St. Patrick's Day, and that came from the community committee, really just focusing in on that day because St. Patrick's Day doesn't always fall on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, we wanted to really highlight that day. And the fact of the matter is we're not having a festival, right? So normally City Council would designate festival days, that those would be days that we would sell wristbands for entertainment and alcohol sales on the plaza, but we're not having any of that. So it didn't make sense to expand a festival type feel beyond St. Patrick's Day itself.
And then for that Friday and Saturday, will you guys, as law enforcement, be kind of cracking down on that? What was the expanded to-go cup zone? Just very strict. If you see a to-go cup that's in that zone, it's going to be no leniency.
So absolutely, we're going to be diligent and ensure that the businesses and the community are acting within the ordinance. The main part of this is that we want everybody safe, have fun. We want to make sure that we don't have a underage drinking issue. So our alcohol compliance unit will be out. We'll be checking on businesses, and then our officers will also be checking and ensure that the proper people who should have alcohol have it, and that they're staying within the zones. this was tested, this area, back in 2019 for several months. We found no real rise or fall in any type of activity when they did try this area out for to-go cups. So we assume that that's, people are going to be responsible, and we'll communicate that with the community.
Thank you guys.
I just wanted to piggyback on what the Major said. We will be actually hosting a meeting with all of the alcohol license establishments that are in that expanded zone to talk to them specifically about the responsibilities that they have relative to this and what our expectations are, that day, and then of course throughout the weekend. So that meeting is this week, and I think it's more than 30 or 40 businesses within that expanded area we'll be meeting with.
Susan, sorry. What about the courts for any citations that are issued? Is there any talks right now as far as handling those ordinance violations, tickets that people might have? Is that overnight? What's available?
No, we used to do a night court type thing. We're not doing that this year. That will be handled on the regular court docket.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
And then any anticipated road closures in the expanded festival zone?
No, not at this point, but we will be briefing you all on road closures as we get closer to the event. That will be in 2 weeks from today.